Pandit Desai's wife, for Shriman Yogi, and Mr. Naga's son-in-law for Shahenshah and Bajirao Mastani, Rahul, that so many people would have asked you, what is it that made you not give this translation to someone in English? And he answered saying, a lot of people who approached him were very good Marathi writers, Marathi professors. And I think what I learned from him was that the language in which you are translating needs to be your, so to say, your mother tongue. Not the language from which you are translating. So I am a Maharashtrian, but my Marathi, if I rate on a scale of 10, is probably just 5. When I go to Pune, I face a big problem when I talk in Marathi because 50% of the words I use are English. Whereas my cousins and my uncles, they speak such chaste Marathi that I feel almost, that I don't know Marathi. But the point was that knowing very good Marathi was actually a sort of I would say, a hindrance to translating into English. Because what you are translating into is the language you really need to understand and think and work very well. So there are 5 or 6 stages of understanding a language. You probably people start by speaking a language, then they understand a language. That's the first stage. Like I stayed in Bangalore for many years. I understand Kannada, but I speak a little bit. The third is you not only understand and speak, you also read, but you cannot write. The next is you write in that language. That's the fourth stage. And then there's the fifth stage, which most of us are good in one language, is that we think in that language. I don't think in Marathi so much, as much I think in Hindi and English. And so for translations, I think it is very important that you have to understand the language in which you are translating. How good are you in that language? Because all your idioms, phrases, metaphors, all your thought process are going to be in that language. So I speak Gujarati at home. Doesn't make me a great Gujarati translator from Gujarati into English. I might do very well in probably Gujarati, but not necessarily. Or if I speak Marathi very well, but I may not be able to translate into Hindi. My wife, though she is a Tamilian by birth, translates into Hindi and vice versa. Because she spent the first 15 years of her life in Bihar. So she thinks in Hindi. So that was the first point I wanted to make, that in what language do you think I think you need to really develop that aspect a lot more, because that's going to determine your understanding of the language. So I have seen, when I saw a lot of translation of Marathi into English, it was a very literal translation. Because I know the Marathi language so well that I am translating word by word. So I saw somebody had done a translation of Shivaji Sawant's Yugandhar. And not realizing that Yugandhar, while Krishna's book story was written in Marathi, Krishna is not a Marathi character. So when you are translating into English, you can't use a Bahini or a Bhauji, because that has got no value in English. But if I am doing a Bapu Kale, or if I am doing a Milind Bokir Shala, which is a Marathi story, it might be appropriate to leave the Bahini as Bahini. And the reader will understand that Bahini probably stands for sister-in-law, or my brother's wife, or a Thai. But when I am doing a Krishna's book into English, Krishna is not a Marathi character. He is not from Maharashtra. He is a pan-India character. And you need to ensure that the understanding that what your reader is reading into. So when I translated Bajirao Mastani, I am using some of the Marathi words like a Muzra. Or when I am doing Shahenshah, we are leaving the Mughal words the way they are. That is Nikurnish Kiya, Ya Salam. Because that's fine. The reader will understand that these are, in fact, if you translate that into like a salute, it may not look good. Shivaji doesn't do a salute to Jijabai. That looks very odd. Shivaji saluted Jijabai. That gives a very English touch to it, and it loses the essence. So that's a delicate balance. Gulzar put it very beautifully, saying that translation is like a mistress. See, if she's very beautiful, she's surely not loyal. And if she's extremely loyal, then her beauty is lost. And that's a very delicate balance as to how do you really maintain the delicateness, you're translating from a particular language, so you want the essence of that language to come out in most of the stories. Not necessarily, say for example, when I did the Tatas, there was no Marathi essence to it. It was a story of the Tatas, which you wanted to ensure that it came out in English in its perfect form. But when I'm doing a Shala, which most of you probably would have seen the movie, if not read the book, it's a beautiful story of a boy in the outskirts of a Bombay city, of a city in the suburban area. But it's got a lot of Marathi character to it. Rao Bajirao Mastani has a lot of Peshwai angle to it, which you don't want to miss out. You want to ensure that remains, and that's the delicate balance I'm talking about. Because if you make it too, what some of the Marathi translators were doing into English, but it was almost looking like a Marathi story. Then the English reader is not going to read that, because the reader is from Delhi or Calcutta or Bombay, who may not necessarily understand Peshwas the way some of us from Maharashtra would understand. So the story has to come out in a manner that it looks like an English story and not a Marathi story. But where the essence is involved, one has to ensure that, and I think that balance people miss out, and the understanding of both the languages, as I started off by saying, is important, but it is much more important to understand the language in which I am translating into. Because while for a Marathi word, I might look at the dictionary and understand the Marathi equivalent, but to put the right English word could become a challenge. So I'm going to take 10 minutes to just read out something from an article I've seen, and I've used that in many places. Just one example to show how you could get your expression quite well. So this example was specific to he said, she said. Most of the times when you're writing, you just tend to use that, he said. But that may not give the right expression. So I'll give out some examples. If it's about volume, जोर से चीखा. So it could be yelled, it could be shouted, it could be bellowed, screamed, whispered. Depends on the volume. चिल्लाया, गर्जा, चीखा, फुसफुसाया. Each of them gives a different meaning to it. You can't say he said, get into the house. He might be whispering. But how do you get that? If you're speaking, it's possible. But when you're writing, you need to get the right word. So for a volume itself, there are so many different expressions one could use. If it's a tone or a pitch, it could be shriek, squeak, groan, chika, karaya, kikiya. Hindi, I don't know, anybody translating into Hindi? So you'll be able to sort of appreciate. Emotion, how do you express? Emotion, he just said with a lot of emotions, with tears in his eyes, imagine. But there are multiple ways by which you could say grumbled, snapped, sneered, which is very different from a grumble, or begged. Like that one could. the said or asked doesn't give a color or a personality to the tone or the dialogue which you want the narrator or the author or the protagonist to actually convey. So if I'm just using he shouted, it may not give the right emotion or the right pitch or the right tone. I'll give some more examples. Affection. I'm talking to the character is talking to someone affectionately. Could be prashansa, could be ashvasan, could be dadas dena, consoled, comforted, reassured, admired. So there are, why I'm giving some of the examples is for you to understand that it's not the range of vocabulary which I'm talking about, because these are common words. Determined, he said determinedly. स्पष्ट करना, आग्रह करना, अड़े रहना, हिदायत देना. Or in English it could be he insisted, he maintained, he commanded. Insisted is different from commanded. So these are not very difficult words in English, but I think what as a translator one has to keep in mind is that am I getting the right emotion when I am, because in the original language it may or may not always have been put in the same manner. But the emotion comes out when I use the right word. Invariably you find, and why I chose this particular example was because you see, if you have done some of the non-fiction translation, you will find a lot of times you are using he said, she answered, he replied. But we find that if it is sadness, for example, it could be cried, mumbled, sobbed, sighed, lamented, rona, sisakna, vilap. Each of these are very different emotions, shades of the same emotion expressed in different ways. And I just thought I'll take this as a little bit of an example. I'm just delivering on it for you to make a point that when I read the story, it's about the author has written it intuitively. Please understand. When the author is writing it, he is writing it intuitively. But you have translated it consciously. The author has a lot of freedom to just write the way he or she thinks about the topic. But when I am translating, I am doing a very conscious effort to translate what was done intuitively into something very deliberately. And to be able to get into the author's mind. So I'll give an example of when I first translated Shala. So the character protagonist is looking outside the window and is just looking at the sky and the birds flying. He's not interested in the teacher, what the teacher is teaching. So I wrote saying that he looked at the azure blue sky. So Milind called me back and said, Vikrant, a 10th standard boy doesn't use the word azure blue sky. That's your English speaking. So you have to tone it down, and the emotion and the language has to be of a 16-year-old. And I realized that in many of my writing, I had used a very rich language, which was fantastic, but it was not representing and the book is in first person. Shala, if you read in Marathi, and I've got a sample for some of you to translate if you want to, is a story of a boy in 10th standard who has fallen in love with his classmate. And he's speaking in first person. Now, the language also should feel like a schoolboy talking to you. It cannot look like a very adult language. So schoolboy doesn't say azure blue sky. He might use a clear blue sky or something like that. And so those are some of the nuances to understand how the author and the character is talking. And which is where, a lot of people had asked me that question, that does it help to meet the author? And my personal feeling was that no, it does not, because it might sometimes color you, because the author has written, in my case for example, most of the books the author has written in Marathi. And the English essence or the English reader is a very different reader. So when Ranjit Desai is writing in Marathi, he is thinking only from a Marathi reader's point of view. Whereas the English of the Gujarati or the Hindi reader is from a very different geography itself, different emotional baggage which he carries. And the original author actually gave a strong, so that's my opinion. It helped me in a case like Milind Bokev's book, because Milind himself writes in English. So he was able to give me a few comments, which also I had sent out of my own curiosity. But the editor, for example, talking about the publishing world, the editor doesn't go back to the original author to ask for his or her comments. The editor is saying that you are the author, the translator is the author, and I would go by what you have written and then look at editing. And I've got a small printout of editing as well. Though it's not a part of what we will discuss today, but I thought I'll just share it with you. It's from a very popular book on how to write non-fiction. And the page which I took out was specific to just editing. Because when you write for the first time, you realize that you'll be using a lot of phrases which you are familiar with. And then you realize that you're repeating them very often in your, every time you describe a sunset, there's a particular way. Every time you talk about a forest, there's some stock lines which come to your mind. Every time you talk about a river, there's some words or lines which come to your mind. You have to be very conscious about the fact that I am using them because somehow I may have grown up with them, or I may have used them or got influenced in some manner. So important for me to increase my vocabulary to express the right amount, right word, storytelling. He was telling a story. He recounted. He remembered. Recalled. Recalled is different from recounted. Recounted is actually telling the whole story. Recalled is just remembering something. He concluded, he related, बताया, वर्णन किया, जोर देना, याद करना. These are all very different ways of stating the same act, depending on what the following words are. It is very important to look at that. Making up or apology. Apologize, agreed, reassured, placated, assented, क्षमा करना, नरम पड़ जाना, मना लेना, मान जाना, दिलासा देना, स्वीकृति करना. These are, so one could go on using these. The point I was trying to make was that be very mindful when it comes to conversations in translation. When you are translating from English to an Indian language, the change of tense is acceptable in Marathi. A past tense can be with the present tense. Some of you, so Hindi or Marathi, तो म्हणाला की मी तिकडे जातोय. Both past and present. But the same thing in English will look very odd. So the tenses in Indian languages are very interchangeable and they are okay. तो म्हणाला की मी जातोय. But you can't say he said that I am going. Because in English it will be he said that he is going. The whole meaning changes when you translate from Indian to English and vice versa. And a lot of people miss this aspect. And the whole meaning of the paragraph or the sentence itself can be very different. And a lot of times when we do a transliteration, this is missed out. So to keep track of the grammar and more importantly the tense and who said what and how does that connect, the reader can get very confused. So it's very important to understand the tense part of it It is a very common mistake people make in translations when I'm doing, especially into English, because in the local language a lot of these things are very flexible and people understand the meaning without having to be told properly, but it can become very confusing in English. One question which a lot of people have asked, I thought I'll answer that. So how does one translate? And we'll do some exercise for you to look at. So I'm given a book or a piece and I translate that into English. Do I do word by word? The answer surely is no, because that will be very literal and it loses meaning. Do I do sentence by sentence? Do I do it paragraph by paragraph? Or I just read the whole thing and I rewrite in my own fashion? I think the last one also is the other extreme, which is rewriting the book itself. Then it's not a translation, it's a sort of an adaptation. A lot of people have written Valmiki's Ramayana, Tulsi Ramayana. Some are literal translations, like if you read Vivek Debreu's Ramayana. We'll start. But I was reading Harsha Sattar's Ramayana. It's more of retelling the story, it's not a translation. She has taken the essence of all the shlokas, but she has written it in a different manner. That's a retelling. But when you're doing a translation, what I have personally enjoyed and I found it works very well. So there are 3 or 4 iterations to the whole process. The first process is about being fairly loyal to the text, at least from a sentence or a paragraph perspective. Not necessarily from a sentence many times, it might be the paragraph. But I'm quite close to I'm loyal to the text in terms of its flow, in terms of how the author is describing the event, and I translate keeping the Marathi book with me and actually writing it in English. Then I do away with the Marathi book and now I'm looking at my own work. And I find that a lot of these sentences do not really make sense. There's a word in English called staccato. A lot of Marathi authors tend to write staccato, meaning very small lines. शिवाजी चालले होते, ते बघत होते, त्यांनी त्यांना मुजरा केला. This sounds okay in Marathi. He's sort of describing, but Shivaji was walking, full stop. He looked, full stop. He did a mudra. It doesn't go well. So you may translate that and say, as Shivaji walked and saw Jijabai coming, he bent down for a mudra, something like that. It has a better flow. So the combination of sentences, the essence of combining that paragraph into a more cohesive line would be the next stage or the first iteration after I have actually translated. In the second iteration, I am actually looking at some of the things which I spoke about. Like he said, he looked, he glared. Try to get the emotion out much better based on what words follow. He said, I hate you, might not convey the meaning. Or she screamed, or she. So it's. But the following sentences will tell you how the emotion needs to be expressed. So that would be the second iteration. In the third iteration, and I'm not touching about this point, but especially in English, there's a lot of value on punctuations, commas. Now different authors have different styles of using, the comma itself can be a topic which you can discuss for an hour. For those of you writing into English, do read a very humorous book by, called, I'll give you some names of the books at the end. There's a book by Lynn Truss, I don't know if you've heard of the author, called Lynn Truss. Please read some of her books. It talks about just punctuation. Very important. A comma can make a big difference. There are so many examples where comma has change the meaning completely. You know, people from, if somebody from English literature background would know. So punctuations carry a very important. And then there's finally there will be a little bit of a style. So I need to maintain a particular style. I'm like in Shala, I had to use the 10th standard boy style throughout. I could not shift from adult to child to child to adult. I had to, child does not mean childish. Child meant using a language which the boy would speak. It's not just about words, it's about the construction of the language. There was a certain amount of simplicity and which had to come out throughout, which came in the Marathi book so well. And luckily it came out in English as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause here for a little bit. We don't have too much time to actually carry out a very interactive session. So I'll share with you some samples which I carried, just for you to do a quick translation of how you would look at it, and then compare with some of the samples I've got and see where you stand. You may not be able to actually go through each of them because that would require probably a long time, but it's just a 10-minute thing. So I want to ask you, how many of you said you want to translate into Marathi? English to Marathi. So I'll tell you what I have here. That becomes easy for you to do. So this is from which one to which one?
Hindi to English.
So I'll give you both. So you look at the one in which you want to translate, and then you have got the, I will not say an answer, got a sample as to what I did. That doesn't mean that that's the best, you might probably do it better, right? Hindi-English combination?
Yes.
One more.
Translation is already there, na? English or Hindi.
That I have just given as a what is it that you did right, wrong, you got it, what was any reactions from people so that we could then use it to share it with the group.
Can we do in a group then?
Sorry?
Can we do in a group?
Can we do it?
Groups only go with the government.
No, this is not a group activity. This is a very individual activity. So group will make more sense because your thinking
Yes.
is very different from. So anybody wants to share just how you felt? The reason I gave you the sort of the other translation as well was just for comparison, for you to feel how does it look when you translate into the other language, and the sample is not necessarily the answer, it's just one more way of writing. Anybody wants to share some experience? Please.
What I want to share is that something didn't go down in translation. I think that is kept as it is. Because the essence of that.
Give an example from what you did just now.
Yes, because
So read out the
there
line
is a
and say.
sentence that मागून मागून तरी आधी काय मागितलंस तू. So I don't use grandmother because the essence of Aji is lost.
Right.
That's what.
So how did you write that line?
Because my English language is combination of multiple of Marathi words. Because I can't translate Aji into grandmother. That the essence is missing in the English.
Okay.
That's only the one line I heard in translation.
So we spoke about that, It depends on what is the story about. Say for the example, the story was set in Konkan, which is representing Maharashtra. And it is a Marathi story. Then I would use the word Aji. I will not write grandmother. In Shala, the character is telling Ai, give me food. He is not saying mother. When Shivaji is talking to Jijabai, he cannot say mother, I missed you. He has to say Ma Sahib. Because the Ma Sahib carries something which is there. But when I am translating a Ratnakar Matkari's short story, not if you read Ratnakar Matkari's Gurukatha, he writes horror stories. They are universal stories. This guy going on the road, he sees a lady standing, asking for a lift. Later on she turns out to be a Dracula. It has got nothing to do knows Marathi, though he is writing in Marathi, then I'll say that lady, and she said, sir, how are you? She won't say, Bhausaheb or something like that. So your answer will depend on whether that story has an essence in the regional language and the region, or it is a universal story. If it's a universal story, one need not be bothered when the right grammar. So you have to keep that in mind. Any other thought? Yes, please. Oh, yeah. I thought you were raising your hand.
अभी जैसे it is probably describing the Krishna under a people tree with his eyes closed. So it is written like for Draupadi Swayamvar ceremony. हम लोग सिर्फ जैसे यह अध्यक्षण ऑफ रुक्मिणी हरण है, वो छोटे छोटे वर्ड्स हो जाते हैं इंस्टेड ऑफ डिस्क्राइबिंग इट इन फुल.
Yes.
जैसे यह द्रौपदी का.
How did you write?
I wrote रुक्मिणी हरण.
हाँ. नहीं, आपने लाइन पढ़ के सुनाई.
पीपल के पेड़ के नीचे, पहले I will read in English. Krishna lay under the peepal tree with his eyes closed.
क्यों, कौन से लैंग्वेज में ट्रांसलेट किया?
मैंने हिंदी में किया.
इंग्लिश टू हिंदी. तो आप हिंदी पढ़ के सुनाइए.
पीपल के पेड़ के नीचे हुए लेटे हुए कृष्ण के मस्तिष्क में भिन्न भिन्न विचारों का डेरा लगा हुआ था. द्वारका का महल, कुरुक्षेत्र का युद्ध, द्रौपदी स्वयंवर, रुक्मिणी हरण और सत्यभामा की आंखों में जब वो प्रभा क्षेत्र की तरफ जा रहे थे. प्रभा क्षेत्र का अभियान.
Correct. So the one which was from the original, it says people के पेट के नीचे सोए कृष्ण की आंखें बंद थी. तरह तरह की दृश्य उनकी आंखों के में आते और निकल जाते. द्वारका का महल है, कुरुक्षेत्र का युद्ध, द्रौपदी स्वयंवर, रुक्मिणी हरण और प्रभा क्षेत्र की तरफ जाते समय देखी हुई सत्यभामा की आंखें. Now the last line was a little differently written, but that doesn't mean that what is written is right or wrong. It's just the way the author thinks and feels comfortable. Yes, please.
So there are some phrases in English or any other language that we can't translate as it is.
Okay.
So there is an example, right from the childhood, Nandini was the apple of her grandmother's eye.
Okay.
त्याचं मराठीत ट्रान्सलेट केलं, लहानपणापासूनच नंदिनी आजीच्या गळ्यातला ताईत होती.
Absolutely. The essence has to come out. Apple of the eye. Gळ्यातला ताईत होती. Apple of the eye. It's a phrase. You have got the right word for it.
So in Hindi we could write Apovala.
आपको बता. सबसे प्रिय थी.
Is there a copy of Marathi to English?
Sorry.
Marathi to English.
I'll get it. It's coming.
I'm not a writer. I'm an amateur. But still, I wanted to try.
Sorry, I will not go into the written text that you have given, but I have a general question to ask. Can we really translate an author? One,
Can we really?
translate an author
Yes.
because you cannot replicate the worldview of an author itself. As you cannot live anybody else's life, you cannot live anybody else's book. Right? Second, let me bring in Heidegger for it. So Heidegger says that words are incapable of expressing our world. Right? So whenever world is expressed through word, we are actually expressing it in an incomplete manner. So given that we cannot fully explain the world, how are we going to explain the world of a man through a vehicle which cannot explain the world fully and is now trying to explain the world of a man in translation? So what is my premise is that it is basically the translator becomes the author in that sense rather than expressing the views of whom he is translating.
Sure. Let me answer. Very good point. Somebody asked me, how do you define translation? And I said, I am creativity within a defined boundary. So I am creative. I am an author. But at the same time, I don't have complete liberty to express myself the way I want. I am bound by what the original author has written. And to that extent, my creativity, I am allowed to use freedom, but not the freedom which an author has because I am translating. First point. Number two, with the first point which you mentioned that it is not translatable. You know, some of the best classics we read, and I am talking about English, you know, right from childhood, whether it is Tintin or Asterix or Gabriel Garcia Marquez or Paulo Coelho, many of these books are not, in fact all these which I mentioned, are not original English. They are not English. They are all written in different languages. Spanish, Gabriel Garcia Marquez wrote in Spanish, but none of us have written in Spanish. We all read the English only. Tintin was written in French or Dutch, you know, but we read it in English. So many times, your Kalidas, how many of us know Sanskrit? So the Valmiki and the Ramcharitmanas or Kalidas or whatever we are reading in our own languages, whether it is Marathi or even the Marathi which Eknath wrote, we read it in current Marathi, not the Modi or some Bhasha which was used at that point in time. So to that extent, I don't believe that translation is not possible, but I agree with you that the translator itself is an author. And that author's mindset is very important. If an author's mindset is not there, it becomes a transliteration. And then it is not enjoyable. You don't enjoy the work because you always feel that it's just being translated. When I am reading a Marathi translation of an English book, I should feel that it is a Marathi book. I should not get the feeling that it's an English book. So that is the beauty and the challenge which a translator has to ensure that when I am translating a Sudha Murthy's English story into Marathi, it should feel like a Marathi story only. It should not feel like an English story. When I am translating some non-fiction, Who Moved My Cheese into Marathi, it should feel that it is being written by a Marathi author. So the translator has to become an author, yes. Very good point.
So, one point, the time is less, so I would like to.
Please.
The first thing, there are many books which are better in the translated language than the original language. And probably we know that book as English, as you said, that it was never written in that
Paulo Coelho wrote in Turkish or whatever.
So the translation and many of the things which we would not have known had they not been translated. So my question today is like, how do you start translating? I mean, you understand you want to translate. How do you approach the original author? And I'm talking about the copyright.
Okay, so let me, we have a few minutes to talk about that. I think, so I'll explain to you my publishing journey for you to get a sense of how to go about it. First and foremost, I have to like the work, irrespective of how good the book is or how popular it is or whether it's a bestseller. If I don't resonate with that, you know, somebody sent me Kiran Nagarkar's Cobalt Blue. And so what I told my editor, I'm not able to translate that. I'm not able to resonate with the gay character. And unless I'm able to understand that gay character, I may not be able to translate that to English. So Jerry Pinto did that work. But I could not do it because I couldn't understand. So it's important that one, you like the book itself, irrespective of how popular or bestseller it may be. After that, I have to contact the copyright holder. Normally it is through the publisher. You talk to the publisher and say, I am interested in this book. I want to translate that. Can I get in touch with the copyright holder? We'll then agree on, in Inamda's case, the son-in-law said, you send me your translation of Ravi Verma. He looked at the original, he looked at the English one before he gave me a permission to translate Rao. In some cases they might say, fine, you know, you have the, please go ahead or send me a sample. After I get the copyright's permission, I need to make a synopsis of the book itself, 1 page, 2 page story, and then a sample chapter of, let's say, anywhere between 4 to 20 pages, and then I have to send it to a publisher. The publisher has to accept that, and you mentioned that I got the permission from the author or the copyright holder to translate this, and the publisher will then decide what are the terms to go ahead and publish them. So that would be the, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah.
So many times the copyright holder So like in Shivaji Samar's case, I could not do Yugandhar because she said my daughter is doing it. And she was in US. So I could not get the opportunity to translate him. By and large, forget the translator, even an author, very rarely is an activity you can do to sustain your lifestyle. So to answer specifically, let's say for example for translation, for a book which is 75,000 words, which is around 300 pages, you may get around 50,000 pages just to translate, which is nothing. And you may get some royalty depending on what terms you have with the publisher. Is he sharing the royalty with you or is he giving it only to the author? So in general, a translation doesn't necessarily, in most cases doesn't become, or even writing for that matter, we meet most of the authors, they don't become, they are not authors who live alone on the money they make. There are very few examples like Amish or Chetan Bhagat or some of them who might actually be able to sort of earn enough money just to write. But there could be a lot of spin-offs which happen because of translation. So I think I would answer your question in a slightly different way. For anybody who wants to write or translate, I think the passion comes before money. If I'm doing it for money, don't do it. You'll not make it. But if you have passion, so many things happen. Yes, sir.
Sir, I have just a single question. Is there a sort of a directory of translators available in India? Because in India there is a need for a translation movement. But that is not taking place because we don't get translation from say Malayalam to Marathi or Bengali to Malayalam.
Yes.
So I would like to know if there is any agency or any institute whom I can approach who can give me the total list of all the
To my knowledge, I think it's still.
I'm sorry, you are not introduced appropriately to us. So, कम से कम आप अपना contact number or.
Oh yes, please. The organizers will have my details.
They are not introduced properly. I have a complaint. But nonetheless, why I am asking, how is the translation as a movement in our country?
Yes, I think the answer to the question is I don't think there are a couple of people who are trying to do translations as a project, but the Murthy Classical Library, for example, talks only about Sanskrit to something else, which Rohan Murthy is, Narayan Murthy's son, is doing that. But by and large, no. There are no Indian language to language or language to English or English to other languages.
भारतीय भाषाओं का अनुवाद
बहुत ऐसी एक जगह शायद मेरे हिसाब से
संस्था भी
नहीं है, बहुत बड़ा गैप है उसमें। कॉमर्स और एंगल भी है कि भारतीय भाषाओं में जो पढ़ते हैं लोग वो अभी भी इतना, देयर आर सम सिलेक्ट पब्लिशर्स लाइक मेहता पब्लिशर्स मराठी और एबल टू डू गुड जॉब, बट अदरवाइज उसका राजकमल है हिंदी में, उनका जो मार्केट है वो भी इतना बड़ा नहीं है जितना होना चाहिए, अनफॉर्चुनेटली। आई एम गोइंग टू शेयर विद यू just okay, for one last word, I have 3 minutes. Note on a book called On Writing Well by an author called William Zinsser, Zinser. A lovely book for those of you who are looking at doing non-fiction. He gives great examples of non-fiction कैसा होना चाहिए, कैसे हम रिपीट करते हैं, एक ही पेज को कैसे आधा कर सकते हैं, how to make it really interesting.
उसका अनुवाद उपलब्ध है?
Anuvad, this is an English book. William Zinsser, it's a very old book. My editor had told me long back. For punctuation, please read Lynn Truss, Lynn Truss, Truss. She's got a lovely book on punctuation. She's written many books, but this particular one, Eat, Shoots and Leaves, that's the name of the book. There's a story behind that. We'll talk about that maybe outside. Yeah, last one. You had a question? Eat, Shoots and Leaves. Yeah, I think the question was my introduction. So my name is Vikrant Pandey. I spent around 25 years in the corporate world after graduating from IIM Bangalore. Then having worked in large multinationals, I moved into education and I was heading a skills university in Baroda, where I stay right now. And then having translated 9 books and now writing 2 of my own books, I have decided to sort of venture full-time into writing. And that's what I do, staying in Baroda 4 to 5 hours a day. And I travel. I'm writing a book on Ramayana, which is a travelogue and a story of Ramayana, unknown stories, which is being published by HarperCollins. There are a couple of other books also. I'm talking to various publishers. There's a history of State Bank of India I'm thinking of doing. Those are some of the things I'm doing right now. Apart from translating, I'm translating Mr. Handekar's Crownchavar, Kaka Vidate's Duryodhan, Vishwas Patil's Sambhaji. These are some of the books which will come out in the next